In modern Russia, about 20,000 people go missing every year, including children. They are not found. Listen to a documentary story about another pervert to know the psychological portrait of a criminal. Perhaps someday it will help save someone's life. Today our story is about Nikolai Dzumagaliyev, nicknamed the Iron Fang. The maniac committed his crimes in Kazakhstan. He killed girls, drank their blood, ate flesh, and even made supplies. They caught him, and tried to heal him. But once he was free, Dzumagaliyev began to kill again. Today, Iron Fang is in a closed mental hospital in the village of Aktaz, Kazakhstan, but some doctors believe that it is time to release the maniac. Nikolai Dzumagaliyev was born on November 15, according to other sources, January 1, 1952 in the village of Uzun-Agach, Kazakh SSR. His mother was a native of Belarus, his father was Kazakh. Together with the boy, his three sisters grew up, while the Dzumagaliyev family could not boast of great wealth. But according to legend, the head of the family was a descendant of Genghis Khan himself, and little Nikolai was very proud of this fact. He grew up as an ordinary child. He didn't have enough stars from the sky, and at school he interrupted from 3 to 4. Dzumagaliyev did not differ in particular aggression, but he treated the girls with contempt, considering them second-class people. And they literally hovered around Nicholas, fascinated by his unusual appearance. Dzumagaliyev received his first sexual experience at the age of 18, and quickly lost count of his mistresses. True, along with promiscuous sexual intercourse, problems came. The young man contracted syphilis and trichomoniasis, which is why he began to feel aversion to sexual intercourse. After graduating from the railway school in Alma-Ata in 1970, Dzumagaliyev managed to work on assignment in the city of Guryev, and then went to the army. His service was in the chemical defense troops in Samarkand. After demobilization, Dzumagaliyev returned to his homeland, worked as an electrician for 3 months, and then seriously thought about changing his profession. He decided to become a driver, and enter the Kazan University at the Geological Prospecting Faculty. But the plans were not destined to come true. Dzumagaliyev failed the entrance exams, but he could not learn to drive. Then Nikolai decided to travel, and went to the north. As a result, he drove through the whole country, from Murmansk to Magadan, changing occupations all the time. Dzumagaliyev managed to visit the expedition, was a sailor and an electrician. It was at this time that he unexpectedly met a girl, for whom he was imbued with serious feelings. But she did not reciprocate, which was a real blow for Nikolai, spoiled by female attention. He hated the female gender more and more. Dzumagaliyev's nomadic life ended in 1977, when he returned to Uzun-Agach. Deciding to change his profession once again, 25-year-old Nikolai got a job at the local fire department. For 2 years he led a quiet life. He worked and changed girls, and then he realized that he had to kill a man. One day in January 1979, on the Uzun-Agach, Mabalak Highway, Dzumagaliyev watched a girl walking alone, an adherent of the Protestant organization Church of Seventh-day Adventists. The young man overtook the victim, stabbed him in the chest, and dragged him into the bushes. Having knocked the girl to the ground, Dzumagaliyev slashed the blade along her throat, and began to drink blood. This act of the maniac was pushed by his passion for the occult. In one of the books he read, that through a cut in the throat, you can see how the soul leaves the body. In addition, Dzumagaliyev learned from books that by drinking the victim's blood, a person supposedly acquires the abilities of a seer. True, Having dealt with the girl, he never saw her soul, and he did not acquire superpowers, but became an ordinary killer. When the victim ceased to show signs of life, Zhumaguliev began to butcher the body, planning to further use human flesh for food. He ate the flesh of his first victim for about a month. He cooked, fried and salted, and also cooked cutlets and dumplings. In addition, Zhumaguliev used the remains for pagan rituals. The little that remained of the victim was found by random passers-by on January 25 at a dump near the village of Fabrichny. The body was so disfigured that the operatives did not immediately understand whether it was a man or a woman. Despite the active actions of the detectives, the girl's fiancé, as well as her fellow believers, were suspected of the murder. It was not possible to find the murderer in hot pursuit. And in April of the same 1979, a new terrible find awaited the guards: the remains of an elderly local resident, who disappeared on the way home from the church. The pensioner became the second victim of the maniac. And again, the police were powerless in their search for Zhumaguliev. And he, feeling his impunity, committed a new, even more terrible crime. The maniac entered a residential building, and cut the throats of an elderly mother and daughter who were sleeping there, dismembered the victims and, under cover of night, carried bags with their remains out of the house. Miraculously, only a little girl survived. One of the victims was a granddaughter, and the other a daughter. She managed to hide in the closet, and Zhumaguliev simply did not notice her. The girl, despite her state of shock, told the operatives about the nightmare she had seen, but she could not describe the killer's appearance. Not a week has passed since the double murder, when the maniac went on a new crime, this time out of revenge. One of his mistresses turned to Zhumaguliev and said that she had reported her friend to the police. They said she had stolen her personal belongings. Then the maniac ordered his girlfriend to bring the offender to his home, which she soon did. Zhumaguliev did not talk for long with his guest. She quickly agreed to have sex with him, during which the maniac strangled the girl, cut her throat, and began to drink blood. After that, Zhumaguliev dismembered the victim, put the remains in a barrel and salted it. But this time, too, the militiamen were unable to catch the killer. True, 2 months later, Zhumaguliev still ended up in jail, but for a completely different reason. In August 1979, during a feast, a maniac shot and killed his fellow firefighter. According to some reports, they had a falling out. According to others, Zhumaguliev simply decided to show off his gun in a circle of drinking companions, and accidentally pulled the trigger. During the investigation, the accused underwent a psychiatric examination. It was then that it turned out that Nikolai Zhumaguliev suffers from schizophrenia. So the maniac escaped prison and ended up in a mental hospital for 4.5 years for compulsory treatment. True, in fact, Zhumaguliev stayed within the walls of the medical institution for only a year, after which the doctors considered the patient to be practically healthy and released him. As soon as the maniac was free, he immediately took up the old. 3 more women died from his hands. One of them was a young mother, who had just given birth to a child. The baby sleeping next to the victim did not bother the maniac at all. He inflicted 18 knife wounds on the woman, from which she died. Zhumaguliev tried to detain the mother-in-law of the murdered woman, but he stabbed her and fled.
The next, 9th victim could be the last for the maniac. One day in December 1980, a noisy company gathered in Zhumaguliev house. Guys and girls were relaxing at a party, where alcohol flowed like a river. At some point, the guests noticed that the owner of the house and one of the girls had disappeared somewhere. The tipsy guests decided that the couple had retired in the bedroom for sex, and for a joke they burst there. The picture they saw shocked everyone. The bloody body of a girl lay on the floor, over which the naked Tsumagalev was bending. He chopped off the victim's head and drained the blood from her into a basin. With wild cries, the guests rushed to the nearest police station, and the maniac himself continued to calmly dismember the deceased. However, there is another version. Allegedly, Tsumagalev himself carried the head out to the guests. It belonged to a girl whom the maniac had met shortly before at the famous Almaty skating rink Medio. Tsumagalev, naked and bloody, met the arriving policeman right on the doorstep. The guards were taken aback, and the maniac took advantage of the hitch and fled. After examining the dwelling, the operatives found the very barrel in which the maniac greased the flesh of his victims. Tsumagalev did not hide for long. A couple of days later, he was found in a friend's house. She hid the maniac in the underground, but attentive operatives noticed that new nails were driven into the old boards. Lifting the floors, they saw a maniac lying there. Tsumagalev, who received the nicknames Iron Fang, for metal crowns, and Satan, did not deny his guilt, and immediately confessed to 7 of the 9 murders. By the way, by that time one of the detainees' sisters had disappeared without a trace, but he denied his involvement in the girl's disappearance in every possible way. During interrogations, Tsumagalev willingly shared with investigators his reasoning about the reasons for his murders. "I took the side of animals, and did only with people what they do with animals," he said. According to the maniac, he killed the girls in order to know their bodies as a whole, including through eating the remains. In addition, Tsumagalev admitted that he took revenge on the opposite sex, for a dissolute lifestyle, and for the fact that girls put themselves on the same level with men, violating the laws of nature. As it turned out, Iron Fang, following the principles of mysticism, committed all murders on memorable dates, for example, on the anniversary of the death of his grandmother, or on the centenary of his grandfather. Thus, the massacres became like sacrifices. The maniac told doctors about his dreams, in which he saw how a turbid river current, or streams of air, carried female parts of the body, legs, arms and heads. A repeated psychiatric examination of Tsumagalev, which was carried out by specialists from the Serbsky Institute, only confirmed his schizophrenia. Therefore, instead of the zone, the maniac again went to a psychiatric clinic for treatment. Tsumagalev spent 8 long years in a special hospital for a particularly dangerous contingent. According to some reports, Iron Fang twice tried to commit suicide during this time. But in general, the patient was very courteous to the staff, never rude, and followed all the doctor's orders. Therefore, in 1989, doctors decided that Tsumagalev was no longer dangerous to society, and he could be transferred to an ordinary psychiatric hospital. On August 29, the maniac began to be transported to a new place, while he was accompanied only by an orderly and a nurse. Tsumagalev did not fail to take advantage of this circumstance, and fled when the trio arrived at Manas airport, Bishkek. The maniac's path lay in the Alato Mountains, where he wanted to get lost. But the police saw through Tsumagalev's plans. Hang gliders were looking for him. Operatives combed the mountain slopes, and after a while the military joined the operation. Meanwhile, the head of the local military unit at first was not eager to send soldiers in search of the maniac. Then the leadership of the Criminal Investigation Department reminded the military that his officers have wives who, like local residents, are in danger while Tsumagalev is at large. On the same day, the soldiers moved into the mountains, and Iron Fang himself decided to let the pursuers on the wrong track. He asked his friend to go to Moscow, and send from there to Bishkek a letter written by Tsumagalev. He wrote that he was in the capital, and was going to kill there. Iron Fang's plan worked. A strange letter without stamps was noticed by the post office staff. They could not return it to the sender. In the column from whom only the surname and first name were listed, Tsumagalev Nikolai. Then the postman handed the envelope to the police, and the guards, deciding that the maniac was really in Moscow, stopped searching in the mountains, and switched to the capital. At this time, Iron Fang himself wandered through the Alito Mountains. He lived in huts and caves, and hunted animals. The maniac collected medicinal herbs and mummies, and then exchanged them from the local population for food and matches. Sometimes Tsumagalev got out to the surrounding cities, and, according to some sources, he committed new crimes. So, in 2014, the maniac was accused of the massacre of a student, which took place in 1990 in Aktyabansk. He noticed his victim when he passed the girl's house. Later he got there through the window. Iron Fang cut his victim's throat, drank her blood, and then cut off the head. When the killer left the house, a neighbor noticed him. The young man noticed that Tsumagalev's mouth was covered in blood, and decided to ask what was the matter. But as soon as he took a step in the direction of the stranger, he shouted that he would shoot, and fled. By the way, later he will begin to tell investigators that the period when this crime was committed, life in the Alito Mountains, helped him completely get rid of all ailments, including mental ones. Hawthorn, mountain herbs and apples played a role. True, a life full of hardships. Iron Fang, too, eventually got tired of it, and he had a plan. In April 1991, Tsumagalev stole a sheep from a flock that was grazing near Fergana, and he did it in a markedly absurd way, in order to quickly fall into the hands of the police. The maniac delivered to the department immediately pretended to be a Chinese, who had escaped from the PRC in search of a better life. Tsumagalev hoped that he would serve a short term, and be released with a new name, and a new passport. But the policemen were alarmed by the fact that the detainee could not really explain where and how he crossed the border. And soon an investigator arrived at the station where the detainee was, looking for the Iron Fang. Tsumagalev was quickly identified, and returned for treatment. In a specialized mental hospital, in the village of Aktas, Almaty region, the maniac is still today. At some point, Tsumagalev even tried to file a petition for the death penalty, but it was, as expected, rejected. In the hospital dungeons, the maniac became interested in playing chess and repairing equipment. He behaves approximately, and helps the staff. Some of the doctors are said to believe Tsumagalev is safe, and may be released with follow-up by a psychiatrist. But those who are not by hearsay familiar with the terrible crimes of the Iron Fang are categorically opposed to this. And the expert on serial crimes of the main Directorate of Criminal Investigation, GUR, Yevgeny Samovichov, summed up his communication with Tsumagalev. He is a wild beast, embodied in human form. The basic structure is the dominance of the male, the law of nature. He will never understand or accept human life. In general, because of such perverts, it is necessary to change the criminal code. What do you, viewers of our channel, think about this? Write in the comments. And also do not forget to share this video on your social networks. Press the subscribe button, and the bell for notifications about new films. Please move on to other videos that you currently see in the end screensavers.